there is, in the last few years, last couple of years specifically, uh, there has been some amount of churning that is happening in this space. Uh, the return of Donald Trump to the White House and its likely impact on global climate action is something that is quite familiar and very well known. But there is also this sort of alternative narrative on climate change that is emerging, a narrative which says, look, the fight against climate change is almost lost. In the sense that two temperature targets that Paris Agreement talks about, 1.5 degree and 2 degrees. 1.5 degrees is already almost gone out of reach, and 2 degrees also is very, very difficult to achieve. So, you know, there is this narrative coming up which says, let's not uh, waste too much of our attention and too much of our resources and energies on trying to reach these targets, trying to achieve the 2 degrees target. Instead, uh, you know try to get rich faster, uh, make your development goals, reach them earlier, so that then you are able to survive better in a warmer world. uh, Nick Stern's book is actually trying to pull the countries back from that argument and saying, look, 2 degrees is eminently achievable. It's not gone out of hand. And there is a very good economic reason to do that. And it's economically feasible to achieve 2 degrees Celsius. And it's in everyone's interest to do that. And he gives a lot of pathways on how to, achieve those objectives. And one of the things that and we'll start with that, he deals with those arguments in detail in his book, which suggests that he makes the argument that this thing about climate action and development, climate action and economic growth being in conflict with each other, uh, that's not necessarily true. In fact, you know, economic climate action, in fact, can support economic growth, can facilitate faster economic growth, and that is one of the arguments that comes out in the book. Mr. Stern, I think we should begin from there. This thing that is coming up, that climate action is in conflict with uh, economic growth. And you say, no, it does not necessarily have to be that ways. Climate action can be used for faster economic growth. So, help our audience understand why you make that argument.
Thank you very much. And you have indeed given the message of the book, but let me try to explain. That argument that we can just carry on and let the temperature turn out, whatever it turns out to be, and will grow, is muddled on the science and it's muddled on the economics. The consequences of going to 2.5 or 3 degrees, which is embodied in that argument, those consequences would be devastating. We're already seeing, and in North India, in the Indo-Gangetic Plain, where I've worked one way or another in one village in Moradabad district of UP for the past 50 years, we're already seeing in the Indo-Gangetic Plain temperatures which are very high. Last year, 45 degrees in Delhi. By 2040, probably we will often see more than 50 degrees C for extended periods in North India. And that kills people on a great scale. At 3 degrees, we lose 75% of the snow and ice on the Himalaya. That would give you uncontrolled torrents in the rainy season and no water in the dry season. It would probably lead to the disruption of the monsoon. You have, on both sides, increasingly severe typhoons and cyclones in India. Over the last 60 or 70 years, the occurrence of extreme rainfall events has tripled. And that's a 1.4. And each fraction of a degree gets worse. The Atlantic meridional overturning circulation which is where the water goes from the equator up to the Arctic, is at real risk of being reversed. One of the consequences of that would be it would probably be almost impossible to grow rice in North India. And that may be at 2.5 degrees. We don't know exactly the probability of those risks, but they're deeply worrying and the consequences are immense. So to say, oh, well, look, let it come, we'll deal with it when it comes, is close to science denial. I mean, it is ignorant of the basic magnitude of the risks. And I haven't said anything about the tipping points. Yeah? And I did mention it essentially implicitly in the AMOC, the Atlantic Meridional Overturning Circulation. But if the land-based ice in Antarctica starts to shift, and it could shift very quickly, then the sea level goes up very quickly. That's Archimedes' principle, right? I mean, if you get in the bath, the water level goes up, but if land ice slides into the sea, that increases very quickly. We are probably quite close to a tipping point in the Amazon forest, with the combination of deforestation and climate change puts that whole system at risk. So that idea that let it go, we'll deal with it when it comes, and then when it comes we'll be richer, is deeply muddled on the science. It's also, and this is the main part of the book, it's deeply muddled on the economics. Because what we have to do if we're to tackle, if we move ahead in climate action, we have to have major investment in energy transition. We have to have major investment in adaptation. We have to do both. There's not some sort of contest, one or the other. We have to do both because climate change is already with us. It's going to get worse. And of course, we have to invest very strongly in our natural capital. And India is rich in biodiversity. It's a big part of the world system, but the whole biome of the world is the natural infrastructure on which we depend for our air and our water and so on. So what could those investments give us? Well, first, the clean is cheaper than the dirty across at least a third of emissions, particularly electricity and surface transport. And we can see now, and you already see in India what has happened to the price of renewable energy. And that's reflected in the investment. Last year, 90% or more of investment in electricity capacity was in renewables. The market is following the statement that the clean is cheaper than the dirty. That will happen and is happening in electric vehicles. More than half in China of the vehicles sold last year were electric, more than 90% in Norway, and so on. That's moving very quickly. So the first is the clean is cheap. Not everywhere. That's not true of air travel. It's not true of sea travel. It's not true of steel and cement. So those are areas where we have to make progress. Well, first, clean is cheaper than the dirty. Second, there's economies of scale. Look what happened to LED light bulbs in India when you went to scale. Crashed by a factor of 4, right, in just 2-3 years. Same is happening with the electric vehicles, and particularly the buses. So you see, you've got those economies of scale coming. You've got systems, and this is probably the most important point, along with efficiency, but the systems, Indian cities are a catastrophe. We all know that. I've been coming to India for 50 years and watched them get worse and worse. 94 of the most polluted cities in the world, 94 of the 100 most polluted cities in the world are here in India. And that's probably India lose maybe 1.5 million people a year from air pollution. And that doesn't count the people you maim. Million, did I say? Million, yeah. So 1.5 million people a year would be losing their lives from air pollution in India, out of a total of maybe 5 to 10 million in the world. And of course, if you maim people, that doesn't count the maiming. Productivity goes down. Now, I hope we object to killing and maiming people. It is also true you can object to killing and maiming people because the productivity goes down. I mean, the first argument is more powerful, but it has a big effect on productivity. Land systems are degrading land, they're polluting rivers, they're destroying forests. These are systems which we can do